Hello, and welcome to the next episode of this exciting journey that we're taking together, exploring the implications and the topics in Ilchi Lee's very incredible book, I Have Chosen to Live 120 Years. Such important work there. And we are excited today to focus in on the elements that have to deal with having a positive mental health attitude. How do we get our mental health to be as positive as we want so we can live the kinds of lives that we want? I am really excited that today, to help us to address these important issues, we have a very special guest, Dr. Paula Reid, who is just terrific. She's a senior clinical psychologist, formerly, doing her work in New York at the Mount Sinai Hospital there, where she was the senior clinical psychologist involved in neuropsychological interventions for people with very severe kinds of brain and mental health challenges. She has been a stellar teacher and coordinator of the next generation of health professionals, helping them to become expert in their chosen field. She also was in charge of the day treatment program for individuals with brain injury. And now recently, she's moved to Atlanta to start her private practice, and she's really focused in there on brain health, cognitive remediation, and other sorts of issues. Paula, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Yeah.
Well, Paula, you know as well as I that there are so many people who are struggling these days with the stress of living in modern America and the modern world. Such tensions and divisiveness. Every second we're bombarded with breaking news, which gets our molecules all excited, as you know. Let me just start us off with just a quick story about how important it is, I think, that we are able to make a choice to live healthier lives. There was a gentleman who came from another country not too many years ago to the United States, did not speak hardly any English, was really a lost newcomer. He had saved all of his money, and all of his supporters and people that cared about him had saved and given him money as he made this great journey. He gets to disembarking on the shores of the United States, and he was distracted by people bustling about and someone asking him a question. And unfortunately, that distraction was probably premeditated, because while they were having that, someone came and stole all of the money that he had brought with him to this country.
Wow.
And now, with this enormous disappointment, he had to make a choice about how he was going to react. And his choice ultimately was that I will not be turned away by this. And in fact, the way I'll view it now is I've just made a donation of $5,000 to my new country. And I'm going to, though, proceed on the same mission that brought me here. And of course, that is a story about Ilchi Lee and his first comings to the United States. What an incredible example. I wonder how you react to someone making that kind of decision.
Well, it's really a very powerful story about how important it is for us to make choices and to choose how we're going to deal with circumstances in our lives that just are not working for us. And I think the thing that's amazing is that if we change our thinking, we can actually affect the environment around us and our circumstances. And that's what he did. And it's a bit, to come up against your money being taken, that you're in a different country, you don't speak, the language, how uncomfortable and frightening, and all the things that must have initially gone through his mind. And yet, in the spite of probably fear and anger and upset that he had, he looked at that, put it aside, and said, okay, how can I change this for myself? And what he did is he turned it around, he reframed it and said, no, I'm donating my money. This person must have really needed it, and I am going to be here and create a great future for myself. And that's what he proceeded to do here in America.
Now, I'm sure that you come across a lot of people from time to time in your work and in your daily life, outside of your professional work, where people decide that they're victims of whatever happens around them, that their
Absolutely.
environment is challenging, whatever way it may be. And as a result, they find it hard to overcome their environment, to make it difficult to take charge. What are you thinking about sort of why that is, and how can people start to make those changes and control their lives?
Well, the thing that's striking is that many people that I see feel like they are victims, like they don't have a choice in the matter, and that they're literally then not responsible for for their life, for the things around them, and then their identity becomes one of a victim,
Mhm.
and that's what they talk about. That's the emotions that get produced in them, and and so the first step there is for people to get, no, they're really responsible for their lives, and they must choose how they're going to live their lives and what they're going to make of those circumstances. Not that we can't prevent things from happening to us sometimes, but we can choose what we do with those events, and that we can choose to master ourselves, master our environment. And it's a process of taking responsibility, living a life that's authentic,
Mhm.
knowing ourselves, and knowing, how to choose then when given choices.
So
Yeah.
really, this issue of choice, that really does boil down to us, I think, deciding that we do have the ability to choose, that we're not just leaves on the mercy of the wind, but in fact that we can have that kind of power. Sometimes having the opportunity to make choices makes some people nervous.
Oh, yeah. And in today's society, think of all the choices we have. Like, very simple, just walking down a cereal aisle at the grocery store. There are a bazillion choices, and people get paralyzed by that. And that's true in our lives too, about how do we choose when there's so many options and when we probably don't know ourselves very well? Then the choices become really overwhelming. So, how do we get our lives to a point of figuring out who are we, what do we want, what kind of choice do we want, and then just choosing. And it's so simple, really. It's like choose, just choose. But it's simple to say it, but much, much harder for people to make that happen in their lives. So
Well, I
yeah.
know that you, in addition to being a practicing healthcare professional in this
Hmm.
field, but you also are a part of the body and brain family, and you're training
Yes,
yourself.
yes,
How
yes.
how would you put the two sides of your training, on one hand, as a clinical psychologist, and your training now in the kinds of things that body and brain is trying to do? Uh, how do you sort of see a vision of what does a positive mental health attitude? What does that actually look like? If you're going to make the choice to do it, each of us is going to have some idea of the goal we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, yeah. So I would back that up a little bit and say, one of the things that is so important is that good mental health is grounded in our physical health, in our physical well-being. And that if we are in touch with our physical energy body through the practice of body and brain, it will certainly impact good mental health. Um, so there's that. There's the practice. My practice is in body and brain yoga allows me to do that, is to get in touch with my physical body and grounds me, and then actually supports good mental health. So that's one thing. That's really important. And then the other thing that's so important is to have a goal,
Mhm.
is to be clear about moving ahead, moving forward. We get stuck, and we can get stuck because we don't have a goal. And then we get stuck in our thoughts, we get stuck in our physical body, we don't find improvement in our health or our mental health. And so having a goal, moving
Yes.
ahead, is just vital. Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
one of the things that I enjoyed from Ilchi Lee's book is he sort of views it, and I'm curious how you sort of, if this resonates with you, a positive mental health goal that you describe
Hmm.
would be the sense of living lives that have a bigger purpose than just
Mm,
ourselves. The ability
absolutely.
to exchange and feel love, the feeling of being independent, and that you in fact are your own discrete person who can react to the world by sharing love, feeling it, taking it in, giving it back, and then a sense of this inner satisfaction that comes with being a part of something bigger than just yourself. Does that resonate with you?
Absolutely. When I worked at Mount Sinai, I worked with individuals who had significant injuries. They were in accidents, so they had traumatic brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, that kind of thing. And what they valued, frequently what they valued, um, being able to have, strong financial profile, their jobs, their role as a parent, their looks, even all of that then got very challenged by this injury. And so the question is, when those things that you saw yourself, you saw as who you were shifted or taken away or compromised severely, the question is, how do you have a life worth living? And that's an extreme case, but it is finding what values are really, really important in life. Who am I and what do I really want? And that leads to what you were saying. It leads to what I really want is love. What I really want is community. What
Yeah.
I really want is giving back and being involved in something greater than myself.
Oh,
And that's when people were able to find that in themselves and around them, they did great. They were happy, productive. Even if they weren't working at a paying job, they became very productive. And it's interesting, it did not matter the level of injury, the severity of the injury in terms of happiness. What mattered was a person being able to shift their values, to embrace really the essence of what life is all about. Yeah.
Paula, the one thing you didn't say in these people, and
Hmm.
this is very interesting to me, and we can learn so much from other people's circumstances, and
Hmm.
especially from things that are as dramatic as you described, is that
Right, very dramatic.
they didn't say, I want a bigger car, I want a bigger house, I want another new suit. It didn't seem to be the material things that gave them their mental health goal. It was something else.
Well, if they continue to hold on to, I want a big car, I want, the big house, I want the recognition at work. If they held on to it, that created enormous suffering
Oh,
in them, enormous suffering, because it was not. Uh, and I think even if we don't, just if we don't suffer from those kinds of catastrophic injuries just day to day, well, is it ever enough? Is it enough? If you got a big car, you want a bigger car. You got a big house, you want a bigger house. It's just, it's elusive. And but if we fall back to the other value system, or the true value system, I would say, of love, fellowship, communion, community, um, service, then there's so much satisfaction in that way of choosing that way of living.
that's very, very,
Yeah,
very instructive.
yeah.
And I think we also take from this particular example is the sense that their sense of who they are and what they need is internally driven, not
Hmm.
externally. They're not looking to everybody else to validate who
Absolutely.
they are. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. It really is about um, looking inside and coming to grips with, well, who am I? If I don't have all these things, and oftentimes the way we describe ourselves of who am I, a person will say, well, I'm a daughter, I'm a mother, I'm a son, I'm a, husband, I'm a worker, I'm a, and they talk about their roles. And then if you dig a little deeper, they may say, well, traits of who they are. I'm loyal, I'm fun loving, and describe themselves that way. And then you dig a little deeper and they may even say, oh, I tend to be angry a lot. I tend to be, all of those things aren't really who our true self is. Those are things that are part of who we are, but it's not, it's what we have, but it's not who we truly are. Those are the experiences that we've had. But so it's like, well, when roles have been shifted, when our ability to actually even feel emotions have been shifted a little bit with an injury, then the question is, who am I? If I'm not those things, who am I? Who am I? Who am I really?
Wow.
And that comes from inside.
That's exactly.
Not from justification from outside sources, right?
Well, you touched on a really important topic here, and that's the sense of our emotions,
Mm-hmm.
and a sense of how do we learn to control those things. A lot of times we get these negative emotions. On my way to this session today, I was driving my car, and as always happens, some rude person cut me off.
Right.
Now, immediately, the tendency to be upset, to be angry. And then I had to remember one of the trainings that, again, we learned from Ilchi Lee's work, which is, that my emotions are not me.
Mm-hmm.
They're mine. That
Right.
who's in charge here?
Right.
How do you sort of think, if we're going to get control over this positive mental health and make the right choices, the next step is we have to control our emotions. Have you learned any keys to doing that in your work?
Well, the thing about emotions, we all have them. Good news is we all have emotions, or almost all of us have emotions, and if we're a fully functioning human being, we're going to have the whole range of emotions,
Mm-hmm.
from very very positive to the things that don't feel so good, that we don't like, the anger, the frustration, the sadness, that type of thing, but also then the joy and happiness. So we all have emotions. They're all there. Our emotions serve us to let us know either we're in a situation that may not be helpful, and they can guide us to make logical decisions. Like maybe if you didn't have an appointment, well, maybe I'll go a different time of day, or, I'll take a different route, and then maybe you're stuck in traffic and that's not an option. Then you get to really choose, say, okay, there's a problem here and I can't really solve it. I'm here. So what can I do to shift this, right? To have a different experience right now other than irritation, frustration, anger. So we can use emotions to help us solve problems, to identify problems. There's a problem that I've got. What can I do? But emotions aren't who we are. Emotions are fleeting. They don't last. They come and go. And so it's very important to realize we're not our emotions. We have emotions, and they're ours, but it's not who we are. So
It's almost as if you're, and I really love your answer, because it's almost as if we reminding ourselves through you that we have the opportunity to stand back and look at them almost objectively. Yes, I am being, if I hear you correctly, and you tell me whether I'm getting this right, my teacher, my it's almost as if you're saying, look, I feel a certain way right now, and I want to be honest about the fact that I am aware of how I'm feeling. Now, this feeling does not own me. I can control this feeling. Why am I feeling this way? Let me look at the things that are causing it. What are the things that are giving me upset? Now that I understand it objectively, I can then take the steps necessary to deal with whatever the problem is, or to find an alternative solution. In my case, with the automobile today and the car driver, I decided that whatever that person was doing with their life, that was their problem. I felt compassion for the bad day they were having, but I also made a decision to think about a beautiful sunrise and a beautiful thought and say to myself, just because he's having a bad day, I'm going to the beach in my mind and have a
Right.
beautiful
Right.
experience. I can
Right.
control it.
Right. You're not a victim to it, right? You took mastery of what that was about for you, which is great.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now, even when we try to control them, there will still be, things that bad will happen. And I think that's the other thing, is just
Mhm.
giving ourselves a
Right.
sense of
Right.
permission. I think one of the things that in the book 120 Years that Ilchi talks a lot about is the importance of having hope. That even when things are going tough, you can still, if you have hope. How did you find with the people that you were dealing with who were suffering not only from serious emotional issues but also brain issues?
Mhm.
What was the role of hope for them?
Oh, enormous.
Mhm.
Enormous. Um, when when people realize that despite their circumstances, they can create and choose a great life. One of the guiding principles there was hope, being hopeful. I can make, and as soon as somebody experiences a little bit of change,
Mhm.
then hope, it supports hope so much. And I was very hopeful, that despite circumstances people found themselves in, that they could have an incredible life. And hope really so important. We talk about, you hear about hope a lot, and it can be nurtured,
Mhm.
and it can be fragile sometimes, but it also can be nurtured by a loving, accepting, genuine, authentic environment around you too. So
Let's key in on those words. Loving and accepting environment. I think that's just really terrific. So again, if we are finding that it's difficult to control our emotions in these troubled times, maybe we need to shift the way we spend our time. If we're
mm,
watching and addicted to cable news, and we see and we're bombarded 24/7 with this
yeah,
negative information, it can sort of take hope away. If we can decide to spend time in the outdoors and give ourselves the space to dream, the space to, and this is, I think, such an important word, we sometimes ignore it, to have imagination, to let our
yeah.
imaginations run wild, and to have dreams. Then we can begin to have that sense of hope. But it can't happen if we're always sitting in a cesspool of negativism.
Absolutely. The environment around us is so important, and nature is so important. Living in New York City,
Mhm.
I found the very strong need and urge to walk through Central Park, to get out in the trees and the green, because it restores our sense of who we are, and awe and wonderment, in nature, and we can find it there.
Mhm.
And I think the other thing that it's not only creating a positive environment, a supportive environment around us, but it's also being in action, right?
Ah,
Not, when you're sitting in front of a television set, you're not in action. You're not moving your life forward. Um, and that, day after day after day, it's deadening. It deadens our souls. And so it's like, well, how do I wake my soul up? And part of that is, let's get out in nature. Let's move. Let's create a goal. Let's, let's practice and ground our physical body in health. And that will shift our mental health. So there's all these things we're talking about that can really create great mental health. And there are things that you've mentioned that can really destroy our health. Yeah.
well, let's talk. Let's actually take that theme a little bit. And one of the things I really love about your sense of taking action, and whether it's getting out to the beach, being in a pleasant place. But there's also action, I think, for mental health, which is trying to help others. I want to show you something that really concerns me. There's a slide I just want to put up on the screen
Okay.
that talks about a real problem in America today with so many people. There's a slide here that really, Paula, that I find really important, and it's very powerful. We're seeing new research identifying what's called a sea of despair among white working class Americans. And this just highlights that the sea of despair that was so often categorized by people of color and others is now becoming part of the American fabric. And as a result, this is what we're seeing in the opioid abuse. We're seeing increasing death rates from drug and alcohol poisoning, suicide, and people with less education are really showing the most. Thank you for showing that slide. And what I'm trying to get to here, Paula, with this is, first of all, there are real serious consequences of not attending to our health. And so one message I want to give right now to every single person that's listening to us now, that if you're one of those people living in a sea of despair and you're trying so hard through everything we're going to talk about, but you still can't get over the hump to get where you need to be, and it's really serious and you're abusing drugs, we really urge you to get help and the professional help that you really need from at the level of your problem. But the point that you raised, and the reason I wanted to show that, was a sense, Paula, that how do you think as we see others in our community who are in that sea of despair, that I think it has a very positive mental health consequence when we go out and try to help others who are struggling more than we are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing is, we talked about being a part of something greater than ourselves. And when you're in a situation where you feel hopeless about your future, your work, that kind of thing, how do you get involved with someone who's in that situation to move them from that place of despair and hopelessness and addiction to a place of comfort and joy? And that journey can be made, and it's made every day, and it's one-to-one. It is being with another, not in a condescending way, but in a way of genuine care, of providing, or being involved in opportunities where somebody can get involved and be of service to somebody else. And all of a sudden meaning begins to seep back into their lives. Now, obviously, if there's problems with addictions, those need to get addressed by a professional. But then just the human touch, pulling people out of isolation, getting them involved in the community, getting them in service to others, and that can be all kinds of things. And then, getting them grounded more in their bodies. Very, very important. But it's one step at a time, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, as you say, as we start to get into maybe a little bit of a conversation about some of the things that you are excited about in your own training at Body and Brain. And I think you sort of said the first thing that I have learned, I think, to appreciate is your sense of getting into who you are, your true self, and not the illusionary self, but finding out the eternal in us, the part of us that is ongoing and in touch with the divine. I think that really is where we have to begin. Yeah.
And it's how do you get through the layer of the ego to get to the true self, right? And I find that the Body and Brain practice provides that opportunity, which is amazing because it grounds you in your body. You learn how to live in your body, be present, and then we don't talk about energy a lot, really, but in our culture, I mean, and having energy flow then opens up opportunities to become really in touch. Well, who am I? Who am I? What is my true self? And then we become very genuine and authentic in who we are with others. And it's really quite exciting.
Well,
So
I
I
think
don't know if I kind of got lost in my
no,
answer.
no, no, no. You
So
did it.
I answered to you, but yeah.
I really heard you. I really heard you, and I think that you're right. Is that when we have this sense, at least I found in my training and practice, is that when I got to have a much better idea of who was the person doing the thinking,
Yeah,
who you know,
right.
who's doing these thinking, who's
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
be better, who's trying
yeah.
to control it. Once I got in touch with the eternal me, I found it so much easier then to be able to deal with the issues outside of me, because I could separate out what was real and important from what was illusion and quite frankly often silly. And
Right.
so
Yes.
understanding the true me gives me much more control. And so in that
Yeah.
regard, and as you say, the energy elements are being in touch with that part of us which is outside of the senses in a way. But we have these techniques and things that we use, and I don't know which of the practices that you found that have been helpful for you most in getting in touch with yourself. But what kind of things have been of interest to you?
Well, okay, it's interesting that I'm saying this, but personally, I find the 1 minute exercise to be pretty profound. And for people in the audience that don't know what I'm referring to, like, what do you mean? There's a practice of taking 1 minute of every hour and stopping what you're doing and doing an exercise just for 1 minute, right? And you do it maybe 10 hours out of the day. The thing that I find is that it disrupts what I'm doing. And maybe if I'm off in my head or whatever, and all of a sudden it integrates my mind, body, spirit. It rejuvenates my energy. It gets energy circulating. And it grounds me. And I go back and I'm refreshed. And as much as I found it to be challenging, I find that it's commitment to a goal and moving towards that goal. So it's very rich, the 1 minute exercise. So I would say for myself personally, and I've observed for others, that it can be a very powerful tool of continuing on a path of staying in touch with true self throughout the day.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. So again, for those that are listening, what many people are really finding, and this is one of the key points in Il Chili's book, is taking a minute out of every hour and doing some kind of exercise. And you can do it anywhere. You can stand up from sitting in your chair, sit back down, stand up, sit back down, stand up, sit back down.
Right.
I mean, you can just decide to do sit-ups for a minute. You can do jumping jacks for a minute. You can do anything that you want.
You can do squats.
Just get
Yeah,
up and do it.
whatever. Yeah.
One of the techniques that I find, Paula, to be particularly useful for my mental health has been the what we call belly button tapping. And for those
Yes.
that may not be familiar with that, this is simply where you stand and I know you can't see my belly button in the shot, but basically imagine that you're just tapping gently with your fists right below, about 2 inches below your belly button, and focusing and on concentrating on the feeling of your hand touching your abdomen. And eventually, over time, you start to move your mind away from the craziness of the day, and you start to focus it internally. It's a very simple trick to get you to sort of work through the noise and confusion and get you back in touch with yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And with that, with tapping on your abdomen, it stimulates a lot of hormones in our system, and it also stimulates the vagus nerve that runs all the way up and down, which is a nerve that can de-stress us, and communicates with the brain. So the brain communicates with our gut, and our gut, it's a two-way street. And so if we work through the body, it will influence how our brain, it opens up possibilities in our brain. It calms us down, and it really is quite incredible. And there's more and more research that is pointing to the importance of this kind of exercise for good mental health. Yeah,
And
through the practice.
the other thing that I would mention that that excites me in my practice is stretching. And
Mm,
the reason that it was, I used to be like most guys, you want to lift weights
right,
and
get strong.
and walk around the beach,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
kick sand in somebody's face. But, so stretching was kind of like, why do I have to do that? Well,
yeah.
now that I'm doing it and I'm doing it every day, I've learned that the only way to stretch and to get to where you're trying to go is you have to learn to let your body relax. You have to let go. And
Yes.
and and so I'm noticing that every time that I'm practicing letting my body go, my mind starts to let
Let
go.
go.
Do you
Yeah.
find that to
Yeah.
happening with you?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we had in the day treatment program that I had is we did a lot of stretching and a lot of deep breathing, because when you're stressed out and tense, your muscles bunch up because they're getting ready to, fight or run, and your breathing becomes very shallow and rapid. And so if you start to breathe deeply and stretch, you're saying to your body, I'm calming down, I'm opening up, I'm centering, and it's great. It's a very important um, physical movement to support calmness and good mental health. Yeah.
So,
And
Paula, let's we
yeah.
sort of review what we've discussed today and talked about.
Okay.
And I'm sort of just, I just find this topic so important and relevant for so many people, no matter who you are watching this podcast, um, that there is, I think we've been trying to emphasize, there is such an important step that we urge everyone to take, and that is every day, every moment that you have the opportunity, choose to have a positive mental health attitude. And remember that it is your choice, and that to an overwhelming extent, you can control the choices that you make.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the other thing that we've really tried to impress upon people is, first of all, the consequences of not doing it are just terrible. We live lives that aren't loving, that aren't caring, that don't share. We will be
Right.
seeing people living lives where they will do things that are harmful to themselves and others. And so
Mhm.
the consequences of not making the choice are preventable misery and suffering and agony. And then I
Yeah.
think we've also been trying to say to people today that once you've made the decision, there are tools and techniques that you can use, but they all begin with your having your own sense of your dream of what your life is. And as you've indicated, Paula, so well, having hope in the future. Any last words that
Yeah.
of these themes that you want to sound before we close out?
Yeah, I think the thing that I feel is so important is that good mental health starts by getting grounded in your body, taking care of your body, moving your body, stretching your body, right? And the other thing I'd want to say is that the thing that's so important and that can get us unstuck is to create a goal for yourself, and every day take action and move in that towards that goal, to reach that goal. And so I would just add that to what you've said.
Yes, great.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I thank you for that. And again, we would, as we last words, also would be to anyone that is really, really struggling listening to the show and feel like they can't do this by themselves. We urge and beg you, reach out to someone else, reach out to professionals
Absolutely.
who can help you, reach out to people in the community that you know, but please do not stay closed up in your own room with the door closed and the lights out. There are too many people that love you and care about you and really want to help you. And for those of you that are feeling
Absolutely.
really energetic today and motivated, all around you are people that need your help. And I guarantee you, the best thing you can do for yourself is to reach out and help someone else. Paula, you have been marvelous, and I want to thank you
Thank
for
you.
joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. Yes.
Thank you. And if we could put up, I want to put up a little note for people who would like to reach us. This is your podcast. This is your show. And so you can reach us by, sending us a message at Live 120 Years. You see the website, www.braineducationtv.com. You can contact us through braineducationtv@gmail.com. You can subscribe to the channel at www.youtube.com, Brain Education TV. We really are looking for this to be your show. So if we don't cover something that you want us to talk about, you tell us and we'll get at it. And if we miss a point in this show that you wish we could amplify more, you send us a note, and believe me, I will be paying attention, because the only reason we do this is because we really do care about you. Thanks for joining us. See you next time. Bye-bye.